I think like many people who have served in leadership positions, the scenario of having a meeting where you know that there's going to be a lot of intense emotions, that there are people with different interests and agendas. That's something I think a lot of people are facing these days, even more so recently. So I think what the emotional rescue method has to offer is on a number of different levels. First and foremost, it is on the individual level. So before I get into a meeting like that, I want to be sure that I am taking care of whatever emotions, anticipatory even emotions that I might have even before the meeting starts, to attend to those in myself, utilizing the method, practicing mindful gap and clear seeing and letting go, even before I get into a room like that. So as much as possible that I'm in a steady, grounded, open, spacious place to the extent that I can be that walking into the meeting. So that's one level, first and foremost. Emotional rescue method, when you hear it, it sounds like, oh, good, someone's going to come and rescue me. But actually, that's a misunderstanding of it, because really what we're teaching you with this method is how to rescue yourself. So that's why I start there with me and what I am feeling like before the meeting starts. So that's for one thing. Another level we can consider it is, okay, so we're in the meeting now and someone's voice is starting to escalate and another person's voice is starting to escalate and you can feel it, right? I think you all have felt situations like that. So again, one of the main kind of revolutionary turns that happens when you practice the ER method is that you realize that the biggest leverage point in that situation is paradoxically to turn one's attention inward. So it's an art, right? Because you're sitting there in front of a team or whoever you're having the meeting with. Again, you can't say, excuse me, everyone, let's pause for a moment while I go out into the bathroom stall and have a mindful gap moment. You can't do that. You have to do it, live in the moment. But even as you're there interacting with people, you could still be practicing feel, hold, look, the mindful gap, step one, while all of these voices are escalating. Because I know for myself, when those voices are escalating, I can feel it in my body. And we place so much emphasis on the body here because the body has so much wisdom to tell us about what emotions are arising. Each emotion has a unique signature in our body. And if we get to know what those are, then we can have an early warning signal for emotion before it even blossoms fully. So here we are, and the voices are getting louder and louder, and I can feel, oh, my stomach is starting to tighten up, or my throat, there's some tightness in my throat, or I'm getting flush, whatever it is. Everyone has a different way of responding to a situation like that. But again, if we create a mindful gap internally, then we start to create a space to work with the energy of the emotion, a space between stimulus and response. That means that however then I choose to respond in the situation is not governed by reactivity, habit, projection, or at least not influenced by it as much, because of course there's no perfection in this as a practice. But it opens up the possibility for more creative responses to the situation. And I don't know about you, but I want to have more choices. I want to have a greater degree of possibility for how to respond in that situation. So the mindful gap opens up a space in me to really have a more panoramic view, which is, of course, step 2 in clear seeing. Having a more panoramic view of what's happening in the situation that's not clouded by my habit or my intense emotions that are happening. So you might think, well, how is she doing that while all this is going on? Again, you practice it outside of a meeting like that, so that when you get into a meeting like that, you start to be able to access it in your muscle memory. So in that case, I'm not coming out of my own body and jumping into the body of the people whose emotions are rising. Sometimes we do that, right? You want to fix it. Someone's having an emotion, or you're worried, oh, this is going to take our meeting off track, or, whatever the worries that you're having. Or you have, any number of things. You could be having a wish to avoid the conflict, for example, and you want to tamp it down. And there's so many different ways that we could be responding to that situation. But what happens is you come out of your own body and you start getting into the body or the emotions of the other person. When you do that, you have automatically restricted or limited the number of possibilities for creative response to that situation. So if you want more options, you won't do that. You'll try to stay grounded in yourself, practice the ER method. And as I said, the mindful gap step naturally flows into the clear seeing step, and naturally flows into opening up a wider range of ways to respond to the situation. So as a leader, I think that's critical. That's critical. Also, because as the leader, you are setting the tone. You're one of the key factors of creating an environment of psychological safety, of creativity and innovation for your team. If you are modeling reactivity, then that becomes an important factor in shaping the norms and the atmosphere of the team. All high-performing teams, so many studies have been done coming out of the work of actually my graduate school advisor, Professor Amy Edmondson, who coined the term psychological safety. She has studied this in so many different contexts. And I think another study that came out was the study that they did of high-performing teams at Google, for example. And they say that one of the most critical factors in teams that are able to learn effectively and innovate and be creative is psychological safety. That means that it's an atmosphere where people feel that it's safe to take interpersonal risks with one another, to be vulnerable, to share ideas, etc. And the biggest factor in influencing whether or not a team has psychological safety is whether the leader models it. So if as a leader, you're not modeling emotional resilience, you're not modeling being able to regulate your own emotions, then that's already a huge contributing factor to whether you can create that atmosphere in your team. So that's another level of it. In a broader sense, we can also look at this from the point of view of organizational culture. In fact, we're really fortunate at Emotional Rescue Courses to be working with some very progressive and forward-thinking organizations who are trying to incorporate the emotional rescue method into their company-wide culture. In fact, they're trying to do, not only are they trying to do that, but they're trying to do that in a time of extreme challenge, of extreme uncertainty, of hybrid workplaces where some people are on site and some people are working from home. How do you create a culture when some people are on Zoom, are virtual, and some people are in the office, et cetera, right? We used to be able to hang out in the coffee break room and, you know, have those informal moments of building rapport with one another. How do you do that? That's a bigger question, of course. But to bring it back to the question, we have power as leaders to influence the atmosphere and environment for our teams and for our organizations and for our communities and for our families. So all of these levels have helped me extremely as a leader and as a human being. But leaders are human beings, and the teams that we work with are as well. So it's something that I've found to be universally applicable, whether it's in a work meeting or in a family situation as well.